Josh Bernstein, Uncensored, is one of my favorite shows. I rarely miss it, and I highly recommend it to folks.
Welcome back to the program. My guest today really doesn't need an introduction, but we'll give him one anyway. He has worked for numerous political campaigns. He's worked for Presidents Richard Nixon, George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, and of course, Donald Trump. Please welcome back to the program, I believe making his 5th or 6th appearance on the show, the great Roger Stone. Roger, how are you doing this morning?
Josh, it's great to be back with you. You know, if you think back on all the presidents I lived under, Dwight Eisenhower, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, and of course, the greatest president who never was, Senator Bob Dole. It'd be very hard for me to pick my favorite. They're all completely different, but I'm proud of working for every single one of them.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So I got to ask you, you obviously have worked for all of these incredible people throughout your long and illustrious career, but you only have a tattoo of one of them. So is that your favorite, Richard Nixon? Or hard to say?
Well, I do have a tattoo of Nixon on my back. It's about the size of a grapefruit, directly between my shoulder blades. But in a way, it's really not a political statement. What it is a daily reminder, because I can look in the mirror and see it every morning. It's a reminder that in life, when things don't go your way, when you suffer defeats, setbacks, when you take some knocks, when you're really tested, that's really when the greatness comes. That's when you have to get yourself up off the canvas and get back into the fight. See, the story of Nixon, putting ideology aside, because Nixon did many things I agree with, did many things I disagree with, taking us off the gold standard, an enormous mistake, perhaps one of his biggest mistakes. But ending the war in Vietnam, desegregating the public schools, negotiating a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets, ending the military draft, giving us the 18-year-old vote. There's a lot of great accomplishments there. But in this particular case, the story of Nixon is a story of resilience. It's a story of persistence. And that explains my love for Nixon. He was also my first boss in politics.
Gotcha.
He was not an ideologue, unlike Reagan. He was not a big picture guy, like Reagan, like Trump. But that's why I have the tattoo. Now, Josh, I'm going to be honest with you. I've thought about adding Reagan, Trump, and Goldwater to my back to have like a Mount Rushmore thing.
You got enough room? I guess you do.
I got a pretty broad back, yeah.
Yeah, you could have like all the presidents that you've worked for. Imagine that.
It would be great. I'm not sure I put the Bushes up there. I did come in to do work on George W. Bush's recount, but even then, in 1988, my candidate initially was Jack Kemp. I ultimately supported the nominee. I later regretted it because I think the war in Iraq was an unnecessary war. That's a whole different discussion. Anyway.
Well, let me ask, you know what, you should, if you did that, if you put all of those presidents on your back, you'd have to leave some room for Robert Mueller to be on all fours on a chain as the rest of them are all walking him around. I just think it would be appropriate. So
I actually knew a guy who had Robert Mueller tattooed on his back.
I knew him too a few years back.
I think he's sorry that he did that now.
He probably is. Yeah, well, he was kind of an idiot to begin with. But so let's talk about the attacks against you. Let's talk about the heartache. But before we even get into that, I really want to ask you from a personal level, how's your wife doing? How are things going? How's your treatment going? Are things progressing in a good direction?
That's a very kind question, and I appreciate it. Look, I I'm like the last person in the world you would expect this from, but at the end of my 2-year ordeal of being vilified, smeared, framed, gagged, bankrupted, and doomed by the Mueller investigation, I had a redemption. I renewed my faith in Jesus Christ. I confessed my sins, and since that time, I've had 4 miracles in my life. The first one being the commutation of my sentence, because they wanted to put me away for 7 to 9 years for lying to Congress. Now, Dr. Fauci can lie to Congress. Nothing
Yeah.
happens to him. James Comey, Hillary Clinton, Rod Rosenstein, all of these people can lie to Congress. Robert Mueller lied under oath to Congress. Nothing
They're all
happens to them.
professional liars.
But they construct, they frame you. Remember, I was convicted of lying about Russian collusion. Josh,
Yeah.
how do you lie about something that didn't happen? It's not even possible. So I had the miracle of my commutation, the miracle of my full pardon, which means I'm not a convicted felon, despite what they write at the Daily Beast. I had the miracle of January 6th. Never left my hotel on January 6th.
Mhm.
Just had an instinct. Call it what you will. I was not on the ellipse, did not march to the Capitol, did not go to the Capitol, know nothing whatsoever about either the illegal actions at the Capitol, where I think people who are misguided made mistakes, but I still pray for them. And then lastly, and most importantly, my wife, who was diagnosed with very aggressive stage 4 cancer, which I think was a gift from Robert Mueller. This is stress related. It's PTSD related. She's now, as of 2 days ago, 120 days in remission, which the doctors said was impossible, not possible. So the power of prayer is extraordinary. Elitist liberals can laugh about that if they want, but I don't really care what they think. I only care what he thinks. And she's doing really great. So I thank you very much for asking.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that, really. And folks, you can always go to the stonefamilyfund.com if you want to help out with medical expenses, medical bills. Obviously, Roger and his wife, Nydia, are, certainly probably up to their eyeballs still in medical expenses and bills. And then also, of course, if you want to help Roger out in general, you can go to stonedefensefund.com. I highly encourage my audience to go there, check it out, and to help Roger. Let's talk about the last time you were on the show was a while ago. It was before the pre-dawn raid on January 25th, 2019, in which this ridiculous 29-man assault team shows up at your house in Florida. And just by chance, I guess CNN was just in the neighborhood, right? Just walking around, They happened to be there, I don't know what, an hour beforehand to catch everything. So without going into too much detail, what kind of transpired on that day inside the house? We saw what was going on the outside, of course, but what were the things that were they saying inside? Were they nice to you? Were they mean-spirited? What was going on?
Well, first of all, we know how CNN got there because I was arrested at 6:06 in the morning. At 6:11, Sarah Murray with CNN sent my attorney, Grant Smith, by text a copy of my indictment, which doesn't seem possible because my indictment was still sealed until 9:30 that morning. It had no court markings on it. It had no timestamps. She claims that she got it offline. That's a lie. The Wayback Machine proves that she is guilty of a felony. But if you look at the metadata tags on that document, you have the initials of the man who leaked it, Andrew Weissman. This is the same Andrew Weissman.
He's a dirtbag, guy.
He's in the New York Times 3 days ago agitating for the indictment of Donald Trump pertaining to January 6th. So he can go out and erase the cell phone memories of the Mueller prosecutors, thus destroying evidence in the Durham investigation. He pays no price. He can cover up mob murders. I can give you the names of people when he's a prosecutor in New York. He pays no price. He leaks the details of my arrest and search warrant, a felony. He pays no price. He also leaked the arrest of Paul Manafort. So again, the 2-tiered justice system was in full swing. I knew they were coming. They tipped their hand because the same Sarah Murray contacted me the day before, the evening before, asking for my home address because she allegedly wanted to mail me something. Now, my home address can be found online, and I knew that. So I went online, I looked it up, and I saw that there were two different addresses because I had moved, and therefore one could have been confused. So I knew they were coming. I told my wife they were coming. I put on my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt, which, by the way, you're extremely well dressed today, I might add.
And thank you for sending that to me a few months ago. I appreciate you sending them to me. I wear them quite frequently.
Happy to do it. You've been a very good friend and loyal supporter this entire time. People don't understand why we still have the economic problems that we do. Recognize that to raise the money for my legal defense, I lost my home, my car, my savings, most of my insurance. And then immediately you are deplatformed. You're absolutely canceled. I had 980,000 followers on Twitter, gone. I had 3.5 million followers on Facebook, gone. I had 85,000 followers on Instagram, gone. So my ability to sell my shirts, sell my books, I've written 5 books, 2 of them New York Times bestsellers, that is completely disappeared. And then when you are assailed, as I am today, as a white supremacist, which I most definitely am not, that makes it even harder for you to work and earn a living, never mind just walk out in the street safely. So yes, it has been a struggle. There is not a month in which the total of my legal fees between the 17 totally frivolous, totally baseless harassment civil suits that have been filed against me by crackpots and leftists and liberals and Democrats. Wait a minute, I'm being redundant. And my wife's uninsured medical expenses, which are considerable for ongoing treatments, aren't greater than the amount of money that I make any given month. So if you want to help me on the legal front, because I still have 17 lawsuits to fight, yes, it's stonedefensefund.com. If you want to help us with our mostly medical expenses, you can go to stonefamilyfund.com. Thousands and thousands of Americans have, and we're very grateful for it. We would not survive on a monthly basis without it. Getting back up on my feet has been far more difficult than I've expected because of the cancel culture. Strictly because of the cancel culture.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, Roger. I mean, look, I call the media, I call them prostitute whores, because that's what they are. They serve the masters of Washington. Usually it's the Democrats, but lately it's been both parties or the uniparty structure in Washington. I know all about cancel culture as well. I mean, I was thrown off of all of social media because I dared to show what was going to happen 2 weeks later. In the election, I showed the Andy Beshear, Matt Bevin Kentucky governor's race on CNN, the Communist News Network, and they were switching votes live in real time on CNN. They were taking votes away from Matt Bevin, the rightful winner of the Kentucky governor's race, in my opinion, many others, and giving them to Andy Beshear. And they were doing it in a flick of a second. And so I was covering that, had 800,000 views on the video. I was circling it and bringing it back and pulling it back and this and that. And then, of course, I got into the beef with Ilhan Omar, or her real name, Ilhan Noor Saeed Elmi, and I exposed this left-wing punk and where she came from, how she came to America, how she lied on her N-400 immigration forms, how she said that she was not part of a dictatorship, which in fact her father, Muhammad Noor, was the former propaganda minister for the dictator Saeed Bayar. So if they didn't leave Somalia, they would have been executed. And that's the true story on her. So after all of this happened and I got into the beef with her, that's when they removed me from everything: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Roku television, Amazon Prime, you name it. So I know all about it too. That's why we're here at jbushow.com or joshbernsteinuncensored.com, because myself, I've had to rebuild my audience as well. And I can't just take an interview with Roger Stone and shotgun it all over the place, because it doesn't exist for me anymore. So I understand exactly how you're feeling, and it does suck. But you know what? We continue to fight, and we're never going to stop fighting. And I want to talk about, January 6th in particular. anyone that's paying attention knows that this was an infiltration by the FBI, the Fascist Bureau of Intimidation, as I like to call them these days, the Department of Injustice, of course, the Capitol Police. Antifa went in first. BLM was there. All the violence was set up that way. We know about the Proud Boys and the infiltration by James Aaron Knowles, into the Proud Boys of Kansas City. We've seen all of the different people, from the flash grenades to all the people that were causing violence, which were not Trump supporters. You were there, but you were not. You were at your hotel, like you said. But yet they're still coming after you. They're coming after you because you were pardoned, obviously. I talked to Paul last week. We sat down and I told him, I think part of the reason that you guys are all being targeted is because of, Manafort, Black, and Stone. You guys kicked the living crap out of the liberals for what, 30 years? You beat them in congressional races. You beat them in Senate races. You beat them in presidential races. They wanted retribution and revenge. That's why I think in the end, they kind of went after you. But talk about January 6th and the fact that these people are still rotting in a prison jail cell. Meanwhile, these Antifa idiots are all out. They destroyed federal buildings. They Molotov cocktailed police. I mean, it's such a two-tier justice system. It's more like a three-tier justice system, if you ask me.
No, I think that's very well put. I mean, most of what I know, I know through the terrific reporting of the Gateway Pundit, who's been particularly effective in terms of exposing.
Yeah, Jim and Joe are amazing.
The corruption of the entire January 6th happening. Where is Ray Epps? He gave a closed door interview to the Unselect Committee. When's he testifying? When's his
testimony?
Exactly.
He was in Queen Creek, Arizona at one point. Some people came up to his ranch, but from what I understand, he's taken his little doggies and his wife, and he's in a Winnebago, and he's traveling through, I believe, southern Colorado at this moment.
Yeah, look, you're never going to see him on TV.
No,
you're never going to. The FBI officials refused to answer questions on the floor of Congress posed by Ted Cruz about how many of their undercover operatives were involved that day. What's even more troubling to me, Josh, is the total lack of due process.
Absolutely,
the total lack of fairness in the way those who may have violated the law are being treated. In many cases, people are being held in pretrial detention without formal charges being arraigned for a longer period of time than they would receive if they were convicted of the crime for which they are charged, which in most cases is simply trespassing.
Yeah, exactly. It's the worst case of prosecutorial misconduct, if you want to call it that. If they really wanted to make a quote unquote, lesson or teach these folks a lesson, they would have given each and every one of them a $500 trespassing ticket and say, go ahead, be on your merry way. And that would have been the end of it. But it's not about that. It's about the intimidation tactics. It's about the Reichstag committee in Washington, led by Lizard Cheney and the rest of the cretins. And that's what it's about.
They keep talking about the deadly attack on the Capitol. The only two deaths that I'm aware of that are directly attributable are the cold-blooded murder of Ashley Babbitt, who is a decorated Air Force veteran, who is unarmed, who is menacing no one, who's given no verbal warning until she's shot and killed in cold blood, or the spraying and bludgeoning of Roseanne Boylan. Why isn't the Unselect Committee showing those videos in their hearings? Why aren't those videos being shown? So you have a one-sided proceeding in which you now have a bunch of clerks who work somewhere in the middle levels of the Trump administration testifying against their former boss. It's kabuki theater. It's a produced television show. If I had those resources, or you did, we could produce a counter narrative that would be just as compelling and just as biased, by the way. So, and they keep saying, this is getting record television. No, it isn't actually. Almost no one.
No, I think there's probably synchronized lesbian swimming competitions in Frog Balls, Kentucky that are getting better ratings than the Reichstag committee.
Well, they'd be more interesting. That's for sure. Look, Liz Cheney, the daughter of a war criminal, a liar who is the daughter of a liar. Her campaign is doomed in Wyoming. Her political career is coming to an end. Perhaps
thankfully.
she'll switch to be a Democrat. She won't do well as a Democrat either. She kind of reminds me of Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, uh, in, her, in,
Yeah,
in her hatred for Donald Trump. But Liz,
she'll be
it's
cooking
over
the
for you.
rabbit soon.
It's over. It's over for you and your war criminal father. It's over for you. You're done. You're finished. So
Yeah,
enjoy.
I've often said the worst mistake Dick Cheney's ever made was Liz Cheney.
Well, to be close, but yeah. I mean, who else is appointed to head a committee to select a vice presidential candidate for George W. Bush and selects themselves? That kind of sums it all up right there.
It certainly does. It certainly does. So, what are your thoughts now on the latest witch hunt, which isn't even involving you at this point, although, of course, they're still coming after you, taxes and all this other bullshit. But what do you think about Steve Bannon and the fact that now we have this other show trial, North Korea style, that is getting ready to take place? I think they just did jury selection. And I know that Bannon has been pretty vocal about the committee and the show trial that he unfortunately has to go through. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I'll be very clear. I had a beef with Steve Bannon because when you compared his sworn testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, in which he said he never discussed WikiLeaks or Julian Assange with me on any occasion, and then in his sworn testimony at my trial, he claimed that he and I had discussed it in every phone conversation we had. And this isn't according to me, it's according to Jonathan Turley, the George Washington law professor, who reviewed both transcripts and said, look, there's a discrepancy here. He either lied at one or the other. And I was sore about that. But because the Bible teaches us to forgive those who trespassed against us, I realized my anger was not serving any good purpose. So I've actually forgiven Steve Bannon for that. And I recognize that any way you slice it, Bannon and I are both now on the same side, is the side of America first. So I'm honestly, having been through the exact same meat grinder that he's going through, I'm actually praying for him. And I see the exact same tactics being used against him. The only difference is I was gagged by the judge unconstitutionally. No place in the Constitution does it say if you are accused of a crime, you lose your First Amendment speech rights. But the judge ruled without any basis whatsoever that my talking could taint the jury pool. Yet I continued to be gagged during the trial, even after the trial, after I was convicted, and prior to the time that I was sentenced, I continued to be gagged. That's how fearful these people are of the truth. And then when I appealed that to the district court, they sat on it for 4.5 months and kicked it back to the trial judge, saying I had to ask her to remove the gag before I could take it to them. Well, she put the gag in place. She would never have removed it.
Yeah, Amy Berman Jackson, is that the judge?
Correct. She also withheld from us the last remaining redacted sections of Robert Mueller's report. So on November 3rd, 2020, only by the order of a federal judge, the Department of Justice was forced to release the last remaining redacted sections of Mueller's long hidden report, in which he admits that he had found, quote, no factual evidence, close quote, against Roger Stone regarding Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration or the phishing and publication of John Podesta's emails. And he goes on to say that even if he had found such evidence, which he says he didn't, he's not even sure it would have been illegal. He thinks it would have been protected political activity under the First Amendment. So what was the whole point of my prosecution? Why did the judge withhold that specific section from my defense attorneys at trial? Because it proved that there was no crime. You can't lie about something that didn't happen.
Exactly.
So,
And not only that, I mean, let's talk about the Black leftist militant woman who was the head of the jury, right? She was an absolute Trump hater. She went all over social media talking about how she didn't like you and she didn't like Trump and she didn't like Republicans, but yet she was allowed to stay there, right? No impartiality there, right? Unbelievable.
No, very interesting.
Unbelievable.
So she attacked me specifically regarding this case, in which she was later selected as a juror. She attacked President Trump and said all of his supporters were racist.
Mm-hmm.
He hid all of those posts on Twitter and Facebook on private settings during jury selection and during the trial. and then she tried to quietly delete them after the trial. And frankly, thanks to some great investigative journalism, she got busted. Now that should have been grounds for a new
Mistrial right off the bat.
trial, but the judge ruled that none of that indicated bias on her part.
Oh, no, of course not.
This, by the way, I hope they understand that probably sealed my pardon. When Donald Trump saw that, he realized this entire process was a fraud, and it probably sealed my pardon. So Bannon's going through the same thing. He has a hostile jury. The judge in his case has disallowed every single possible legal defense. His lawyers yesterday decided they would put up no defense because there's no defense to put up. Sadly, I do think that he will be convicted. I'm praying otherwise. And I think he will get a disproportionate sentence as well to make a lesson out of him. It's very hard to understand. I mean, Rod Rosenstein testifies before the Senate, says that he didn't approve the investigation into Roger Stone. I produced the exact document in which he did exactly that. No charges will ever be brought against him. James Clapper says, no, we have no metadata collection program on American citizens. That turns out, thanks to the revelations of Edward Snowden, we know that to be a lie. That's a material lie. That's a pretty big lie. No charges will be brought against James Clapper. He's now teaching ethics at Vermont College.
Ethics, imagine that. The word ethics and James Clapper together in the same sentence is just unbelievable.
Meanwhile,
Unreal.
he's got a nice paying gig at CNN. So basically, as they show, Andrew McCabe is the best example of this. Guy breaks the law multiple times. The prosecutor in my case, the ultimate prosecutor in my case, on the day that I'm convicted, he announces that no charges will be brought against Andrew McCabe, that he's just going to walk.
It's unbelievable. And that's why I stopped covering the Durham, case. All these people are getting their panties in a bunch. Oh, any minute it's going to be imminent, bombshell. They're going to arrest all these people. Come on. They're not going to do anything. That's not going anywhere. What are your thoughts on that real quick?
The Durham investigations had two values. Once, it doesn't matter whether Sussman was acquitted. That was wired. But their entire conspiracy was laid bare in a courtroom. It's not deniable. Now, in the second trial of Igor Danchenko, I guess.
Yeah, Danchenko, I think his name.
It's going to take it right to Hillary Clinton. What will happen in the end is that Mr. Durham, who is working for the Obamas, will conclude that Hillary committed multiple crimes, but unfortunately, the statute of limitations has run. He can't convict her. That's why he's getting her out of the way for the 2024 presidential race. Josh, never forget this. The Obamas despise the Clintons. They despise them more than we do. You can find a quote from Obama where he says, I got tired of Bill Clinton poking me in the chest and telling me everything I was doing wrong. Barack Obama is a much greater politician than Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton never got 50% of the vote in any presidential race. He was a minority elected president, unlike Barack
Especially
Obama.
with Ross Perot's race, my goodness.
Both
he didn't even win that one.
Both those races. So he never got 50% of the vote. No, he's not a clever politician. He's a clever liar. I mean, this is the governor of Arkansas who went to the U.S. Supreme Court to argue that racial profiling should be able to be used by the Arkansas State Police. This guy put on the dog whistle every time he ever needed to, like Joe Biden, who said, I don't want the public schools in Wilmington to be desegregated because they'll become a jungle, and I don't want my daughter going to school in a jungle. It's in the Wilmington News Journal. That's racism. That's the dog whistle right there. So nobody has been more adept at it than they have. Yet I'm a 30-year critic of the war on drugs. Not the war on drugs as begun by Richard Nixon, which targeted drug traffickers and drug dealers, but the war on drugs as turbocharged by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden and signed into law by Bill Clinton. This is where we get the harsh mandatory penalties for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs that has been used to disproportionately incarcerate Black people, people of color, poor people. These people belong in drug treatment programs. They don't belong in prison. They're not a danger to anyone. So yes, I have spoken out. against that form of racism for 30 years. But if you go on Twitter right now, you'll find 100 people calling me a white supremacist.
Right. Hey, they call me a white supremacist. Meanwhile, both my parents are 100% Jewish and I'm Jewish. I shave my head because, I am follically challenged. Unfortunately, I'm a little too tall for my hair, I guess. But they call me a white supremacist. I mean, Newsweek did a full spread calling me a white supremacist. Then they put a picture of David Duke and the Ayatollah right next to me. So, I'm used to it too, Roger.
Two of your closest friends, no doubt.
Yeah. Hey, look, if they're not attacking you, then you're not over the target. But before we wrap up, what are your thoughts on the midterms? I know that many of the Republicans out there are saying it's going to be a blowout. It's going to be a tsunami. We're going to crush them. The congressional is +9, the enthusiasm gap and all that. But I'm very worried. And I'm worried because of the March 7th, 2021 secret executive order that instructs 600 federal agencies to stop business as usual and to work on election and election outreach, voter registration. These are HUD and housing, and this is like all these different entities that never ever deal with anything having to do with voter registration, voter outreach. So what they're doing is what they couldn't get done with HR1. Now they're trying to backdoor federalize the elections moving into 2022. So I personally am worried about it. What are your thoughts?
I share your concern. I do not see a big Republican blowout coming. They are using the mechanism of government to try to cook the elections. We still have no guarantee the elections will be free, fair, honest, or transparent. Most of the swing states have not reformed their election laws. The same people who were in charge 2 years ago will be in charge this time. Pennsylvania, for example, where mail-in voting is most definitely unconstitutional. The lower courts, the Commonwealth courts, have ruled that way. That's being appealed to the state Supreme Court. But in the meantime, mail-in balloting will still be in place and functional in the next election. So I think there will be a Republican victory, but I'm also caution people that just if the Republicans were to take both houses, that doesn't necessarily mean anything will change.
Nothing.
If there's a rhino majority, then nothing whatsoever will change. We saw Kevin McCarthy in the hearings last night betraying Donald Trump. Why you would want to make this guy speaker, I can't even imagine.
I can't either.
I
can't either. I've said this before. We're going to manage the decay for the next 2 years. See, the Republicans, and I've talked to lots of House members, Freedom Caucus members, and they're frustrated too because they know that, Kevin McCarthy could walk down the middle of Washington, D.C. and unzip his fly, and you'd have 200 fake Republicans lining up to service him, okay? Because he's a cash cow, because he raises money for all of them. So what their strategy is let's not do anything. Let's not say anything. Let's not make any sudden moves. And let's just let the Democrats implode, and we'll pick up 35, 40 seats, maybe 1 or 2 in the Senate. We'll grab both houses, and then we'll manage the decay. Meanwhile, it's the most historic opportunity in the history of the United States where we could have 85, 90 seats in the House and 6 to 7 seats in the Senate and actually do and conduct real change. But we're not doing that. We're wasting this opportunity. And as I've said before, if we have Kevin McCarthy and the Kentucky Fried Chicken, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, we're going to manage the decay for the next 2 years. And that's sad.
Well, I was trying to get the image you just described of Kevin McCarthy zipping his fly.
Well, hey, I'm dropping little tidbits because I'm hoping that not only when you share this, but others share this, that we get some play on this, we get some action on this.
Look, I'm hoping for the election of a subset of good men and women in both houses within the Republican caucus who have a large enough number that they can leverage the leadership to demand the impeachment of Joe Biden, for example, to demand extensive investigations into the activities of Hunter Biden. Today's papers say that he's involved in plea negotiations, so they're going to try to quickly give him a slap on the wrist to close the door on his many crimes. No, I don't think that cuts it. I don't think that's going to do the trick. But I see no evidence that Kevin McCarthy's prepared to investigate the Bidens. No evidence. He's already announced that he won't impeach Joe Biden. I'm hopeful that enough Republicans are elected, a subset within the caucus, to deny this guy the speakership, because leaving Kevin McCarthy changing from Pelosi to McCarthy would be like leaving dirty diapers on a baby and just changing the pins.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't have said it any better than that, Roger. Well, Roger, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the program. I can't wait 2 years next time. I got to bring you back on a lot more frequently. Tell folks where they can go to learn more about you, the things that you're doing, all that good stuff.
Sure. If you want to get one of these great T-shirts, like
Yes.
Josh is wearing, he's wearing the Roger Stone Still Did Nothing Wrong, the successor. I'm wearing one of the originals. Go to rogerstonestore.com, rogerstonestore.com. If you want to help me in my epic legal battle with the deep state, you can go to stonedefensefund.com. If you want to help with household expenses and most importantly, my wife's uninsured medical bills, you can go to stonefamilyfund.com. No, for those of you who want to go on social media and say that I'm a grifter, no, I'm asking because I have to. I'm asking not because I want to, but because I have to. And I'm grateful, frankly, to over 85,000 individual Americans who have stepped forward to help us. God bless you all. I hope you will consider going to one of those sites. But whatever you do, we do appreciate your help.
We do. Amen to that. And God bless you. God bless your wife. I hope things, get better. I know that, you just want to be left alone like everybody else and just live your life and enjoy your life. But unfortunately, we have these people coming after us constantly because we're over the target every single day and we continue to fight and we will never stop fighting. So Roger, God bless you. And thank you once again for being on the program. Appreciate it.
Josh Bernstein, Uncensored is one of my favorite shows. I rarely miss it and I highly recommend it to folks.
Well, I appreciate that as well. Thank you again, Roger.
God bless you.
God bless.